What is up, y'all? Back again. Today we have an article from the Epoch Times. Is the Goliath in autism research about to fall? So obviously for a long time now, they have been trying to paint autism as environmental as genetic rather than environmental. And this article from Epoch Health is talking about a research study, which was an extensive meta-analysis of 25 autism studies. And this ties gut microbiome to autism through this meta-analysis. So this article that they are talking about is from June 26th in Nature Neuroscience, and it talks about a lot of different things, which I'll get into in a minute. But there's a quote in this article from a Dr. Arthur Kingsman, and he says something that I think we can all agree on, and that is genetic diseases aren't responsible for epidemics. And then they cite the fact that autism has gone from 1 in 150 in 2000 to 1 in 36 in 2020. And actually those stats are even from several years earlier in like 8-year-old children. So the numbers are likely much higher now. So the reason why I found this article so interesting is because it was a meta-analysis of 25 different articles. So it shows basically that there's a consensus gut microbiome definitely has a link to autism. Now, this is where the correlation causation thing comes in, because I know what y'all are thinking. Don't I talk a lot about, I hope my phone doesn't overheat, other environmental factors, say ones that children get from the pediatrician, and how that's involved in the autism epidemic? I certainly do. So this finding of gut microbiome disruption can definitely be more of a correlation than a causation thing, or they can be like a chain reaction. So we have to always look at that. Somebody said thimerosal. I am a lot more interested in aluminum than thimerosal, although mercury, all heavy metals, clearly they are an issue. Okay, so back to the article. Here's the kind of interesting findings that y'all may have not heard of before. So basically they are talking about epigenetics here. Dr. Mark Cannon cites a 2012 article, and he talks about the epigenetics of the gut microbiome, which is kind of what I'm talking about. So you might have somewhat of a genetic predisposition to have some type of dysfunction, and then obviously an environmental factor is going to come along and play into that to that genetic predisposition, and then that's when you can end up with an issue. That's called epigenetics. So they talk about the microbiome of the gut, having bacteria, viruses, fungi, and how all of that works together to like break down our food and give us the nutrients we need in the proper way. And some of the environmental factors that can definitely affect our gut microbiome would be like air pollutants, artificial foods, glyphosate, viruses, stressors, and different toxins. Something they didn't mention on their list, but it's a pretty obvious one, would be if you're ever getting antibiotics or even like steroid shots and stuff, different things like that can all affect the gut microbiome. Basically anything you eat, anything you come in contact with could disrupt that gut microbiome. So this is the part that I thought was so interesting because it was a little bit different. They talked about something called short chain fatty acids, and how different short chain fatty acids can have an interplay with autism and how this can be affected by the gut microbiome. So he references this article, and the title of the article is Short Chain Fatty Acid Fermentation Products of the Gut Microbiome, Implication in Autism Spectrum Disorder. So why this is interesting is because it's talking about how these short chain fatty acids are broken down and fermented in the gut in people with autism and certain gut disorders, and how the breakdown of these fatty acids could actually be what's causing the symptoms of autism. So they talk about this propionic acid and autism spectrum disorder interplay here, and how autism spectrum disorder is associated with certain gut bacterium. So we have Clostridia Bacteriodetes, and we have these words are always so hard for me to say, even if I practice them. So Desulfovibrio, Desulfovibrio. So those would be two different gut bacteria that would be associated with autism spectrum, and the thought is that they're affecting how these short chain fatty acids are broken down, fermented, and then how those would affect the brain. No way the numbers before the autism were 1 in like 10,000. They were like 1 in 10,000 if you're looking back to the 1970s for sure. Okay, so how did they look into this? What they did was they actually took those short chain fatty acids that are produced by this fermentation product and injected them into the interventricularly into rats. So that alone is kind of wild, because if you think about interventricularly, it means into the ventricles of their brain. So there's a lot more going on in brain trauma and everything that would be happening there, as opposed to if they were administering these a different way, say like orally or something. But this is what they chose to do. And when they did administer these short chain fatty acids, that were fermented in this way, similar to how it would be happening in a person with autism, they found that the rats had behavioral changes, neuroinflammation, increased oxidative stress, and decreased glutathione in their livers. They also noted changes in phospholipid and I cannot read my handwriting, acylcarnitine in the bodies of these rats. And all of this, the outcome, equal mitochondrial dysfunction, which is something that I think it was found either 88%, a very high percentage of people with autism have this underlying mitochondrial dysfunction, and they've known that for quite a while. They also have neuroinflammation. So I found this article pretty interesting. I always like when more research and more investigation is done to show the actual physiological basis of autism, because a lot of times autism is kind of painted as some type of psychological developmental disorder that is just genetic, even though we know that lots of people with autism actually go through a regression when they're a couple of years old. And a lot of the symptoms of autism, true autism, are very neurological. So I always think it's important to talk about the actual biological, physiological basis of autism instead of like the behavioral aspects, because if we don't heal our bodies, we're not going to be able to utilize our minds correctly, and that's true for everyone. Everyone benefits from better food and decreasing all those toxins I talked about, like air pollutants, artificial foods, glyphosate, and stressors. So very, very important there. But yeah, this was a great article. I did want to say why this is so important to me is for that reason, because people with autism can find a lot of healing if they are given a proper environment and it's important to the people around them to support their bodies as best as possible. The most unfortunate part of the autism epidemic to me is the fact that there's almost like a battle against trying to support the bodies of people with autism so that they can heal and feel their best and utilize their body and their mind to the highest extent possible and become as most independent as they can. So reference to this would be like the meme that I just shared. I actually came across that meme in an autism group. It's a public group, but it's, it's supposed to be kind of a support group for parents in my state. And this autism humor meme page had started posting in there recently. And I actually think that this was directed at me personally because a parent had posted about their child asking, saying that their behavior was an issue. And I had responded to them and said, it's very important that you support their body by trying to eliminate, certain inflammatory foods, processed foods, toxins, and these things can help your child feel so much better, and that will affect their behavior. And when I had noticed this meme, it showed that I had posted that 3 hours prior and that they had posted the meme in their 3 hours prior. So I'm pretty sure that their meme was kind of in response, poking fun to what I was saying to this parent, which was absolutely true and trying to be helpful. So the meme, as y'all can see if you go to my page, is like, kind of joking about parents saying, I healed my child's autism with a parasite cleanse. Obviously, a parasite cleanse isn't what I'm talking about when I'm talking about helping people with autism heal and have their bodies be utilized to, the best extent possible and feel their best. I am talking about elimination of toxins, inflammatory foods, processed foods, artificial food dyes, all of those things there, and also reducing EMFs, screen time, and things like that, sugar, all of that stuff. But, this person had posted that, and then another person commented below, yeah, that's how I felt when someone brought up autism and, the shots, and, with a laughing emoji. So I just went ahead and commented back to these people because to me, this is not helping. You're not helping people with autism if you're discouraging lifestyle changes that can be helpful to those individuals. You're actually discouraging people from finding, things that can make them feel a lot better and be able to function a lot better. So moving along from that, I do want to say there is a huge push in the world to basically water down what is autism. I have had kind of some issues coming to grips with the fact that there are people who kind of grift off the idea of having autism, and these people have no real dysfunction. There was a woman that I discovered on YouTube a little while ago who says that she basically decided at the age of 31 that she had autism, even though she had no signs of struggle or issues growing up. She had no developmental delays. She never spent time in special education. She was seen as a leader. She was seen as very capable her entire life. But she wanted to paint herself as having autism, and now she has over 100,000 YouTube subscribers. So to me, I like to wonder, these people who say, I have autism, which is considered a developmental disorder that is also a disability, and I don't know if these people then seek disability assistance or funding when they go on and get these diagnoses as fully functioning adults. I'm really not sure how they handle it, but I do like to wonder, do these people think they would qualify for things that are designed for individuals with special needs, like the Special Olympics? Is that something that are they going to appropriate autism to the extent of like wanting to compete in the Special Olympics and things like that? Are we going to see a similar situation to what we see with men wanting to compete in women's sports? Or Are these people, you know, do they have some type of boundaries and some type of lines that they're not willing to cross? I don't know. I guess we'll see. I did go to the Special Olympics website though to check this out, and thankfully it looks like the Special Olympics website, from the Special Olympics website, like they have already thought about this and that they have put in place some boundaries so that people who are not actually disabled would not be able to just go ahead and jump into the Special Olympics and compete against people who have struggled their entire lives, who have been in special education, who have had to overcome difficulties, hardships, and developmental issues. And I think that that's great because, unfortunately, you know, even worse than a person, you know, wanting, you know, a person who was born as a man, who has testosterone, who has a high level of body muscle and things like that, wanting to compete against females who do not have testosterone, who have a lot less muscle and strength. The only thing worse than that would probably, in my opinion, be able-bodied people who seek a late autism diagnosis wanting to compete against disabled people in the Special Olympics. So it does look like they have some protections there, but I would not put it past these people because I've watched them grift off the idea of having autism, even though they were diagnosed late, even though they lived fully functional lives, many of them married, many of them with careers, many of them deny ever having issues with communication as a child.